Today, there's a lot of talk about the global energy crisis, but is this just some unlucky thing that our world happened to stumble into, or is this an engineered global energy reset? Historically speaking, our world uses more and more energy as time goes on. The consumption of energy increases. And this is illustrated perfectly by something called the Henry Adams curve. If you look at the Henry Adams curve, which is the red line here, you see the increase of energy consumption on average over time going back to the 1700s. The black line illustrates the actual energy consumption, which coincidentally in the early 1970s stopped following the curve that it had followed since the 1700s and suddenly started moving sideways as we stopped consuming more energy. Now, all throughout history, what has happened is as humanity consumes more energy, we produce more wealth. The more energy we consume, the better life everybody has. More people get pulled out of poverty and are able to experience a better quality of life. The discovery of fire allowed people to stay warmer and extract more nutrients from food. It allowed us to focus more on building stronger shelters when our only energy source was biomass, biofuel, burning wood. And then we discovered coal and we invented the steam engine, and that allowed us to stop burning our forests down. Is coal ideal? Far from it, but it was better than wood. And then when we discovered oil, it allowed us to stop harvesting whale oil and stop using dirty coal, and unlocked an incalculable amount of human wealth. I mean, just look at this partial list of products made as a result of petroleum. And given the fact that this list is from 1974, this is a small fraction of what we have today as a result of oil. Today, we would not have life jackets, shoes, paint, epoxy, aspirin, nylon rope, water pipes, football helmets, cell phones, anesthetics, or heart valves without fossil fuels. Not to mention, even the transportation of all of these are 100% dependent on fossil fuels. But again, something changed in the 70s. We spent all of human history increasing our energy consumption, and then in the 70s, that stopped. Now, starting in 1971, there were quite a few trends that had lasted for decades or centuries that suddenly stopped or started moving sideways as a result of the gold window closing and governments having an unlimited amount of spending power as they could print money into existence and only be restricted by political will. And one of the results of that was stopping the increase of energy consumption that would have kept on going if we would have been allowed to move forward with nuclear. Nuclear energy is actually clean energy. It produces zero carbon emissions. As we'll see, it is also safe in terms of its waste, and it is extremely energy dense. Today, nuclear energy produces about 10% of the world's electricity from only 440 power reactors. But this clean, safe, and dense energy production source, nuclear, was neutered by idiotic government policies. This reckless agenda has been the growing plan to reset our energy infrastructure worldwide. Now, at this point, most people are realizing that this agenda is doomed. Wind turbine blades, which are becoming useless far faster than anybody ever expected due to erosion, are now piling up in landfills. On top of that, solar panels, which only have a 25 to 30 year lifespan, are starting to pile up in landfills, leaching toxic waste. Simply put, without nuclear, the global energy reset, the green future that these utopian globalists dreamed of, is absolutely doomed. And the places where they claim to care about this the most have the most opposite results. Case in point, Germany retiring their nuclear power plants, and as a result being forced into reviving coal as their source of energy. And as if going back 100 years to coal wasn't bad enough, Europe is being forced to sacrifice its forests now now as it burns wood for energy, literally going back to a third world country status. But it is not all bad news everywhere. Some countries are waking up and realizing that you can't have that abundant future that everybody wants without clean, cheap, abundant energy, and that the best way to accomplish that is with nuclear. There are dozens of nuclear power plants in the plans to be built all around the world. China is obviously leading the pack with 33 plants planned, but even the United States now has 3 new plants planned to be built. And thankfully, public sentiment is recently actually starting to change on this. Over just the last couple of years, more and more people who are polled say that they are in favor of the use of nuclear energy. And as recently as 2022, that number was a record high 77%, with 91% of people being favorable to the idea of living near a nuclear power plant, which makes sense because the danger from radiation of standing next to literal nuclear waste is less so than eating a banana. And even government support is changing, with the United States now moving towards providing public funding for nuclear. But the one big problem with this is nuclear takes time to build. Even with the most favorable regulatory conditions, it still takes years to over a decade to bring a new nuclear power plant online. And that is years that European countries, especially like Germany, just do not have right now with their imminent energy crisis. It is absolutely a crisis of their own making, but it is a crisis nonetheless. This is not something in Europe that can be solved with nuclear right now. They need an immediate source of energy that is clean, that is cheap, and that is dense as quickly and as cheaply as possible. And the war with Russia right now is only exacerbating the issue. And this is where today's sponsor comes in, MCF Energy, a brand new company aiming to solve exactly this issue, the energy crisis in Europe. Because natural gas is the best candidate in terms of energy sources to solve Europe's energy crisis right now. It used to be the case that Russia got 45% of its natural gas from Russia, but that's no longer the case. And just as throughout history, as you get more energy consumption, you get more wealth, more jobs, more ability to make more stuff more cheaply, the opposite is true as well. If you suddenly get cut off from an energy source, that means energy gets more expensive. That means making things becomes more expensive. That means labor becomes more expensive. That means less wealth for everybody, which is why companies like BASF are cutting thousands of jobs due to high energy costs. Plant closures and factory layoffs all over Germany are continuing. We're starting to see deindustrialization happen. Now, because of the previously mentioned global energy reset, forcing countries like Germany to shut down clean, abundant energy sources, we saw governments all over Europe spend years underinvesting in the current energy infrastructure. Instead, they poured billions of dollars into doomed green energy products, which woefully underproduce what they need, which means that now they're having to import natural gas from all around the world. And during 2022, Europe was the main destination for natural gas coming out of the United States. But obviously, this is extremely expensive, leading to places like Germany having to fire up their coal plants again and burning down ancient forests. What this means is that there's a massive profit opportunity for local natural gas production, which is exactly what MCF Energy aims to do here. Because for years now, Europe has been forcing certain amounts of money to go only into green energy production, but something recently just switched about this. Now, natural gas projects are labeled green. That's right. If you are now a government in Europe and you have a certain number of billions or hundreds of billions of dollars that are earmarked and can only be spent on sustainable energy, green energy, natural gas is now included in that. Now, obviously, this is a move born out of desperation. Instead of just fully admitting their mistakes and saying, hey, we've been wasting, burning money, for years on a hopeless endeavor to make solar and wind happen, and they have no hope of ever producing the energy we need. Instead of admitting our mistake and walking away from that, now we're just gonna say natural gas is clean, which means they recognize that local natural gas is the only way to solve the imminent crisis that they're in, and they have hundreds of billions of dollars to spend on it now. But they aren't out of the woods yet, because China is set to be a big disruptor in the global natural gas market for 2023. This wasn't the case last year, as China was still locked down, but China imports their natural gas. Whereas most of the natural gas from the United States went to Europe in 2022, now you have a new buyer coming in for 2023 that will try and scoop a lot of that up. This means that natural gas will either be unavailable or just much more expensive as a massive new buyer enters the global natural gas market, China. Now, what MCF Energy has found is that there's very little competition so far. They are the first public venture trying to solve the natural gas problem in Europe since the Ukraine war, which means that MCF now has the ability to take advantage of years of European dependency on Russian natural gas. Because of cheap Russian energy, there are many domestic projects that were completely abandoned over the last couple of decades. And so MCF has its eyes on projects that are proven from past development. And now with modern technology and machine learning techniques, they're certain they'll be able to squeeze profits out of these projects for decades to come. It has already locked in 2 giant prospects in Europe's safest jurisdictions, one in Germany and one in Austria. Essentially, MCF is an early stage opportunity in one of the most profitable sectors ever. But one of the most compelling things about MCF, at least for me, is the leadership team. The most exciting of these to me is Ford Nicholson, who came on as an advisor and major shareholder to help steer MCF's growth. The reason is because Ford Nicholson has led multiple billion-dollar plus exits in the energy sector in his career. Yes, that's billion with a B. He founded or helped lead several oil and gas companies that led to billion-dollar plus exits for investors. And the executive chairman, Mr. Park, led his last energy stock from 30 cents a share to over $12 per share, and has over 40 years of experience in the energy sector, including advising governments and oil majors on asset acquisitions and divestitures. And one of the craziest additions to this leadership team is General Wesley Clark, the former head of NATO and retired 4-star general, who you may or may not be aware has been an executive and an investment banker since leaving the military. And he was a director of Bankers Petroleum, which grew oil production in Europe over 2,000% and was valued at over $2 billion. Obviously, the reason this leadership team matters is because they have experience, big money experience, and connections. And strategic advisor Ford Nicholson said he thinks this is the best opportunity he's ever seen in his entire career. Now, recently, MCF led a financing round that was oversubscribed. Why is this significant? Because it was at 50 cents per share, which means that right now, the stock is trading at a price below what big money and insiders invested at. MCF Energy represents an opportunity to get in at the beginning stages. This is a brand new company of business that has the mission, the leadership, and the capability to solve Europe's energy crisis, and obviously profit handsomely off of it. The company right now has a valuation of a little over $60 million, which means there is risk here, no doubt about it. This is not a blue chip or guarantee by any means. But if the leadership can pull off what they think they can pull off, another $1 billion minimum exit, and this has the potential to be a 10 or 20 bagger. And full disclosure, I own the stock. I am not a financial advisor, and this is not a recommendation. Do your own due diligence before making any investment decision, and always manage your downside risk. As always, really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.